I'm going to make a start, because otherwise time and tide waits for no man. And as we'll see tonight, a lot of the themes of this evening are the existential conditions. And I see Dizzy at the back there, so I know it's one of your favourite themes. And so I hope as you go through this evening you'll get a lot of value from some of the stuff I will be talking about. But I want to share too that none of this is true. So I want to sort of start by saying none of this is true. It's very much a questioning process I'm going through. But before I begin my talk, I just want to thank you for being here. This is the last London lecture of 2014. I don't know if you guys, who was here for my first one, Time and Timelessness? Excellent. It's so lovely to see the same faces coming back and to really see an amazing community of thinkers, people who want to understand coaching at a different level. I think it's so rewarding for me to see, because that's really what Animals is about. It's how do we take coaching to another level? And to see you guys come back time after time after time to expand your own thoughts, to grow the way you think about coaching is really wonderful for me to see. So thank you for being here. It's also amazing to see how it's grown. We started with about 40 people booked and about 25 turning up back in May. And now we have 115 being booked, and, well, we'll see by the end of the evening, but hopefully about 80 odd people coming. So it's really great to see the way it's expanding. And I suspect that next year, 2015, we'll see a new venue. So watch the space for a new posh venue. One day, I'll actually own it, but not for a while. So some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Nick Bolton, I'm the founder of Animus Centre for Coaching. I don't always do these talks. I like to pop in occasionally, do the odd ones. I generally do one every 4 or 5 months, just to keep my hand in. And this evening is no exception. I really want to explore some of the thinking I've been going through, but by no means, this is not Nick Bolton says it's this way, therefore it is this way. It's just me exploring some thoughts with you, as I did with Time and Timelessness. Just sharing some, what I call pondements, which is a kind of a combination of pondering and wondering, and wonderments, all combined into a lovely word, pondements. So guys, this evening we're going to be talking about what lies beneath the surface. Or what lies beneath, coaching under the surface. And Dave, if I ask you to bring the lights down, I just want to get these guys pondering even, on what this means to you. When you take a look at this picture, just take a few seconds to take a look at it. As you ponder the idea of being under the surface, what comes up for you? What are the emotions you have as you think about being under the surface? What are the thoughts you have?
Mysterious.
Mysterious. Nice. Thank you for bravely shouting out. That's great. Who else would like to bravely shout out? Yeah.
90% of that is under the surface, so we can see only 10.
Okay, great. You're the logician in the world, in the room.
Imagination, I guess, because I can't see the top, but I just know.
Imagination, nice. Nice. So you have to imagine what's there. Cool. What else? Yeah.
I think a sense of guardedness, because the things that lie beneath are usually things we don't want people to see, as we present what's on the surface to people. I guess our advertising. And then,
that's right. Yeah. But also, how familiar are we with what's under the surface? Maybe some of it's guardedness and some of it's unknowing. What else comes up for you? What emotions do you have? What thoughts? At the back.
Peace.
Busy.
Peace.
Peace.
Like
Peace. Yeah.
I've got the other extreme, unsettling.
Oh, really? Interesting, isn't it? What does our relationship to this image say about our relationship to beneath the surface, to the unknown, to the unexplored, to the hidden? What does it say about it when we have a reaction to it? What else comes up?
It's almost like floating beneath the surface.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly I flipped it and it felt the same as floating in the sky, but actually it was below me, so I was happy to float down.
So would you say it felt happy? What other feelings were attached to that concept for you?
Sort of at oneness. There was a certain sense of peace and tranquility.
We get a couple more, yeah.
It kind of feels to me, looking at that image, that you kind of, because the light is not there to shine on these things, you have to use different senses to discover. So a sense of discovery, but using a different palette of senses.
That's a really lovely answer, this idea that you have to develop a different nuanced approach to things and a different nuanced appreciation of things, different sensitivity. Yeah.
Hidden resources.
Hidden resources. So for you, that's your own hidden resources that are hiding under the surface? Are they hidden from you or from the world, or who are they hidden from?
Hidden from me.
Okay. How does it feel to have hidden resources?
It feels exciting.
Good. Yeah. Okay, give me two more.
The unknown.
The unknown. What was the unknown? Great. Okay. And what does the unknown mean to you?
Personally, it makes me feel very uneasy.
Does it?
Yeah.
And I think I saw a hand right at the very back. Was that a hand at the back?
It was, yes.
Go on.
Sorry. Unexplored.
Unexplored. And how does it feel to be unexplored?
Obviously, the picture, the iceberg that you can actually see is what people see.
Yeah.
And for me, this is what people don't see. Sort of person underneath.
So who's unexplored by?
Everyone, I guess.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Dave. If you can, yeah, one more then.
Although the surface for me reminds me as part of the whole. So it reminds me that that's
Lovely.
one part. And it doesn't exist if it doesn't, there's no the other part.
Great. So for the guys at the back, in case you didn't hear that, that was a really nice answer that said that what's under the surface is part of the whole. Now that might not be seen, the form was part of the whole, and the top wouldn't exist without the bottom. Okay, Dave, if you might put the lights back up. So I'm going to be talking tonight about what does it mean to be coaching beneath the surface. As I said at the start though, when I say this, I don't come to this with any sense of truth. This is very much a person standing in front of you with questions, not with answers, with possibilities, not with absolutes. And so anything I present you with tonight is not, this is how it should be done, this is my new super advanced knowledge, which takes you to a new level. No, it's a possibility to explore for yourself. And I know that when I came into coaching 10, 12, 14 years ago, blimey, doesn't time fly, that I remember we were very focused on the idea of performance and task and how do you do something differently, and it was very much focused on this notion that if somebody's got a challenge or a gap between where they are and where they want to be, it's all about filling that gap with stuff. When I say stuff, I mean actions, doing, knowing, acting. Whereas for me now as a coach 14 years later, there's a different sense of what it means to work with somebody, but there's no more right or wrong. So I just want to start off this whole talk with some caveats. So the first of this, one perspective. Whose perspective? My perspective. Doesn't have to be yours. So the reason I say these caveats at the start is because it's very easy to sit and listen to somebody and go, "Bro, that's not true. My experience of that's very different." So that hand, oh, it's a wave, okay. Yeah, my experience is very different. Nick's wrong. I don't want you to feel that. I want you to feel it's okay to actually disagree with me because there's nothing to disagree with. This is just my thoughts. So this is just one perspective, one human being out of 7 billion human beings' perspective. Secondly, it's not an either or, but rather a if and when. What I mean by that is, or what and when. What I mean by that is, it's not a case of do you coach above the surface or do you coach under the surface? I must decide. This is my niche. I'm under the surface coacher. No, this is about knowing the right time to coach at different levels. And if you come to me and I want to create a business plan, please don't coach me on under the surface. It won't be appropriate. It's about knowing what you're coaching on and what the end outcome, the intention is, if you like, of the coach and the coachee. Next one is, it's my current story right now. This thing I'm talking about exists right this very second, in this moment in front of you guys. That's it. When I walk out of here tonight, it might change, and I'm okay with that. Are you guys okay with that? Yeah, cool. Because it means that we're all free to grow and evolve all the time, our thinking. This isn't some fossilized piece of knowledge that I'm going to stick to for the rest of my life. This is always evolving. So right now, this is my story. And finally, it's always evolving, as I just mentioned. So, let me just ask you a question. When I talk about what's at the surface, when I say what's at the surface, I mean, what do we see of people? So there we are, we're a coach, and somebody comes to us. What do we see of people? What do we experience of people that's there for us to externally notice and to have fed into us? What sort of things are at the surface?
Facial expression.
Brilliant, good. So let's chunk that up, as we say in the NLP world, to physiology. Facial expressions, body language, all that kind of physiological stuff. Great. What else?
Appearance.
Appearance. Who said that? Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Emotions.
Oh, are they?
Emotions.
Are they? How do we know an emotion when we see it?
Expressions.
Okay, so that's at the surface, isn't it, the expression. What else is at the surface that might come from emotion, Magda?
Words.
Words, brilliant, yeah?
The behaviours.
Behaviours, cool. Any more?
Stories.
Stories. You've been watching my slides. You got all of you guys. One more, I think I saw. Did I not see a hand? No.
Clothing.
What's that?
Clothing.
Clothing, okay, cool, yeah. Appearance, clothing, great. So, here's some thoughts, behaviours, language, non-verbal communication, the presenting challenge, in other words, the words they use to describe the challenge, and the told story. Not the story, but the told story. And that may be different, it may be the same. This is what we see, isn't it? This is at the surface of our experience of somebody. We don't actually see the emotions as such. When we think about it, we see the expressions of the emotions, we see the verbal manifestation of the emotion. We don't actually see, there's no kind of chunk of anger or chunk of sadness or chunk of happiness we see. We see some manifestation of that emotion. So when I say about what does coaching at the surface look like, I'm asking, if that's what we see, what does coaching at the surface mean to you? When I say coaching at the surface, what does that conjure up for you?
Exploration
Exploration of what?
of the told story.
Good. Okay, exploration of the told story. What else?
Curious. Curious.
Curiosity. About what?
Feelings and expressions.
Maybe. You're sent here to challenge me tonight, Alphonse, aren't you? Okay, what else?
For me, it's a superficial.
The superficial.
Superficial coaching.
I don't think it has to be superficial, but I take your point. It kind of almost sounds, I mean, if that's superficial and coaching at the surface should theoretically mean the same thing. But I think superficial has tended to develop quite a derogatory sense of shallowness, hasn't it? I think it's superficial in the sense of what I'm about to say, but it's not superficial in the sense of being less worthy. So here's what I think of when I talk about coaching at the surface. You tend to focus on the doing. And I still see this with a lot of coaches that we initially train. Gradually they open up to new possibilities, but they tend to focus on, great, you've told me this, what do you want to do about it? There's a focus on how do you want to change it by doing something. Secondly, there tends to be a forward focus. Where are you going to move this to? What's the story leading us to? How do we change that? And that's fine, by the way. It's okay. This is not a list of things you shouldn't do, not at all. This is really appropriate in the right place. Next is this idea that perhaps we work within the given framework that the client presents us with. So they give us a story, and we sort of accept that story. We assume there's a sort of a verifiable truth to it, and then we work within it. So if somebody says, I want to get into a relationship, we assume that that story they're telling us is absolutely right for them, rather than that it's a representation of something that's somewhat deeper. We tend to accept what we call the logical level. So if we're working at a behavioural level, if they bring us a behavioural issue, we work at a behavioural level. If they bring us a values issue, we work at the values level. We don't think to ourselves, what's the deeper level that might be representing? And as I say, none of this is right or wrong. It's just that this tends to be a way of working, which keeps people at roughly the same logical level. All right then, so what's under the surface? We've seen what's above the surface. What's under the surface?
Motives. Motives.
Motives, nice. Okay, yeah.
The story.
The story. The hidden story. The untold story, yeah. What else?
The emotions attached to us all.
The emotions attached. You know, one of the most powerful questions you can ask in coaching, I believe, is what's the emotion attached to X? Whatever X is. What's the emotion attached to it? Incredibly powerful, because it starts to reveal where this thing is coming from. What else?
Experiences.
Historical experience, absolutely, yeah.
Being.
Being. What do you mean by being, Jessie?
As opposed to doing, the way you show up in the world.
Right, how you show up. Okay, nice. Give me two more. Fears, okay, great. And fears is an example of? Yeah, emotion, isn't it, in a sense? Although it tends to be an emotion predicated on some assumption. Okay, one more. Margaret, yeah, go for it.
Suppressed feelings.
Suppressed feelings, great. Okay, so here's just some thoughts. Number one, values. And by the way, guys, you know this stuff. So I'm going to take this to a different place, but I just want to start with the foundation. So values tend to sit beneath the surface. Habits, the things that we do habitually, our beliefs, our assumptions. And by the way, assumptions and beliefs can be very different. They can be, assumptions tend to be much more, talk about tautology, I was going to say much more assumed. But beliefs tend to be something you can be a bit more explicit about. Whereas assumptions you just take for granted without really even thinking about them. Expectations about what life should be like, expectations about how the world should respond to you. Memories, obviously distorted memories in a sense, and conditioning, and by the way, many, many more. So that's the kind of stuff that's hiding under the surface. So the question is, what is that all? I call that the existential paradigm. You construct, so this is only my current thinking, but you construct this notion of an existential paradigm from all your things, your beliefs, your values, your assumptions. It all constructs a sort of existential paradigm. Imagine like a suit of armour you wear around you, that you walk into the existential world. That's your existential paradigm. It's how you experience the world. Now, here's a good question. If that's your existential paradigm, what is that paradigm encountering? Imagine, who's seen The Matrix? Only a few of you. I bet that's not true. Who's seen The Matrix? That's more like that. So imagine in that film where there's a different reality. Imagine for a moment that the reality you see is not what you see here, but the reality of you with your existential paradigm walking through the world. What are you encountering?
Other paradigms.
Oh, nice. Other paradigms, yeah. What else?
Either things that challenge or affirm.
Nice, okay. Well, this is getting tougher now, isn't it? Oh, you thought it was so easy tonight. Magda.
It might be in the form of game. For some people, they are players, and this is a game. Or for other people, it's a theatre and the actors. So everyone's got a different metaphor of life.
Right, okay. But what's it encountering? What I'm going to propose is encountering the existential conditions. Your existential paradigm is necessary to come into contact with the existential conditions which are unchanging for all of us. In other words, we form a relationship to the existential conditions which just are in order to live with them our way. Now, our way may be more or less effective. But we have to, rather like Neo in The Matrix, we have to encounter a world that wasn't what we thought. And as we go through this world with this body armour of existential paradigm, we encounter this other world, which is the existential conditions. What do I mean by the existential conditions? I won't ask you, I'll tell you, because you're looking a little bit daunted already. So here's what I mean by the existential conditions, and there may be more. The first one is agency and responsibility. But we have some agency. Now the question is, where is the line between agency and non-agency? Where do we have responsibility and where don't we? Now, I'm not one of those people that say, you're responsible for everything. Third world crisis, it's your fault. We live in a world that's far more complex than that, but we know that at some level we have agency. Do you know what I mean by agency? That we have responsibility and ability to show up in the world. That we're not at the beck and call of all the forces around us with no ability to respond to that in some way. That's agency. We have that, but we're never quite sure where the boundaries are. So when do we blame somebody? When do we take responsibility? When do we say, oh, it wasn't my fault because? And when do we say, actually, what can I do differently here? That becomes a conundrum for us that we have to shape through our paradigm that we create. Make sense? And that basic thing that I've just said to you goes for all of these. We have to face these things, and in facing them, we face them with our paradigm that is created by our beliefs, our assumptions, our values, etc., etc., etc. Is that at the sort of a big level? Is that clear? Yeah. Just a few little shakes of the head. So I'm going to give one more go. Out here, there are givens, what we call human givens, which just are. Now we have to face those just ares in some way. How we face them is our existential paradigm. It's our way of facing those things which just are. You see, a job just isn't just. There are places in the world where jobs don't exist and places where they do, so it's not a just are. But is choice a just are? Yes, it is. We all have to choose at some level in this life. It's just given. So what else is just given? Ooh, strange. gaps are just given. Purpose, this feeling that somehow we should have some purpose, or something should have some purpose, is something we contend with. What am I here for? It's not given, but we have this sense of, what am I doing here? Otherwise I'm just floating. Belonging in relationships. How do I belong to my world? How do I belong to other people? How do I relate to people? If you think of the philosopher, someone like Hegel, Hegel said that the self can't know itself until it meets the other. In other words, the other is a prerequisite for the self to exist. And in meeting the other, we have to form relationships. So therefore, relationship is an existential given we have to confront and contend with in some way. Temporality and mortality. We don't live in a ahistorical way. We live in a historical way. We are situated in a time, and we have to confront that time. Like, who would love to wake up tomorrow? Who would love to wake up tomorrow in the 18th century as a lady of the manor, with a beautiful house and grounds and footmen and horses in a stable? In fact, you are Jane Austen. Who would like to wake up at another time, maybe not that one, but another time tomorrow, your perfect time in history? Anyone? Yeah? But you can't. Tough. You're stuck in the 21st century. We don't have that choice. I might want to wake up as a gladiator tomorrow. Nick, tough. You are where you are. You're in 21st century Britain. We have to deal with the temporal nature of living. We have to deal with the fact that we are going to come to an end. We can't do what we do forever. We're going to come to an end. So at some point, at some level, we have to come to terms with that. And then there's choice, exclusion, and loss. And what I mean by choice, exclusion, and loss is that by choosing, we lose. You choose, you lose. By choosing, you lose. What do you lose?
The other option.
The other options. No, some people have a problem with that, some people don't. How you have a relationship to this issue that by choosing you're losing is how you have your existential paradigm. I think it's one more, which has jumped. Oh wow, what was in that gap? That is so weird. There wasn't a gap there, I promise. I have got no idea what should be in that gap, but it's intriguing, isn't it? Okay, so one of the things we're doing all the time, I believe, is we're making meaning. We are making meaning of the world we're confronting. And that meaning is being made through our existential paradigm. In other words, our paradigm that we form is encountering these givens, and in that encountering, we are making the meaning which is unique to us. About what does this interaction with this person mean? Why do I feel that they're rejecting me or they're accepting me? What does that say about my place in this world? That is an attempt to make meaning of a given interaction, which is not about an individual, but about a paradigmatic response to this given. Does that make sense?